Even if I stay out all night, I don't owe you anything. Those cold words ended our relationship. I accepted a job in Dublin and left in secret. Now I have a new life and a new love. But her confession in San Francisco changed everything. She was alone when she lost our baby. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. I vanished from her life without leaving even a single note, but when we crossed paths 12 months later, the confession she made left me completely numb. Imagine being told by the person you love that they have no obligation to tell you where they spend their nights. That was the moment I realized our life together was an illusion. My name is Julian, and I am a 33-year-old cloud systems architect. I handle remote operations for a major technology firm in Seattle, though I have always felt more at home in the quiet, green outskirts of Vancouver, Washington. I earn a very comfortable living, not quite billionaire status, but enough to build a solid nest egg and live without financial stress. I am not a fan of luxury branding or showing off. For me, the pillars of a relationship are consistency, transparency, and honoring one another. 3 years back, I crossed paths with Elena at a mutual acquaintance's celebration in the heart of the city. She was 29 then, working as a creative lead, and she possessed a magnetic aura that seemed to pull the entire room toward her. She had golden hair, piercing emerald eyes, and a spirit that felt boundless. Our connection was instant, sparked by bad singing at a dive bar and glasses of mediocre house wine. Within half a year, we had moved into a loft with industrial windows and a view of the skyline. The initial 2 years were fantastic. We explored the world, taking drives to the coast, trekking through the rainforests of Belize, and setting up camp under the stars. Weeknights were for shared meals, and Sundays were for getting lost in movies. We maintained our individual friendships and gave each other room to breathe. I truly believed we were crafting a lifelong partnership. However, as we approached the 30-month mark, the atmosphere began to turn cold. She started returning home at odd hours without mentioning her whereabouts. She would be glued to her smartphone for hours, tilting the device away the second I stepped into the room. Her dialogue became brief and distant. If I asked how her afternoon went, she would shrug it off with words like fine or just busy. At first, I didn't let it bother me. I believe in personal boundaries, and I gave her my full trust because that is how you treat someone you cherish. But then came the evening that broke the foundation of everything we had. It happened on a rainy Thursday toward the end of September. The timing was terrible because I had a crucial presentation scheduled for the following morning with a massive corporate client. A successful meeting meant a life-changing contract for my department. Elena sent me a message around sunset saying she was heading out for cocktails with some colleagues at a newly opened spot. I told her to have a great time and stay safe. She told me not to stay awake waiting for her. By late evening, I was resting in bed with my computer, finishing my final preparations. It was then I noticed the house was still empty. I checked my messages, but there was nothing. I sent a quick inquiry to see if she was all right, but received no reply. I assumed her battery might have died. I tried to rest, but a sense of dread settled in my chest. Midnight passed, then the early hours of the morning. By 3 o'clock, I was pacing the floor, my mind racing with concern. This was completely out of character for her. I attempted to call her several times, but it went straight to her greeting. I even messaged her closest friends Sarah, Chloe, and Nina. Silence from everyone. The quiet in the apartment was deafening. I thought about calling the emergency rooms, but I didn't want to overreact. I just sat there, watching the clock and fearing the worst. Elena finally walked in at nearly 5 in the morning. Her appearance was disheveled, with makeup running down her cheeks and her hair falling out of its pins. She carried the heavy scent of spirits, tobacco, and a masculine cologne that I didn't recognize. I stood up, trying to stay calm, and asked where she had been. She kicked her shoes across the floor, not even meeting my eyes. She acted as if I were a stranger. When I told her I had been terrified and was seconds away from calling the authorities, she just groaned, as if I were being a burden. She told me she was a grown woman and didn't need to report her every move to me. A wave of anger hit me. I reminded her she had been gone all night without a word, and I had been worried sick. She brushed past me, stumbling slightly toward our room, saying they'd just lost track of time and it wasn't a big deal. I followed her, asking how she could be so inconsiderate. She stopped in the doorway and looked at me with a cold, sharp gaze filled with resentment. She told me that even if she decided to stay out until dawn, she was under no obligation to explain herself to me. Those words were like a physical blow. I was paralyzed. When I asked her to repeat herself, she simply stated that she wasn't my possession and didn't owe me a play-by-play of her existence. She said we were equals, not a parent and a child. In that moment, something inside me went quiet. The anger vanished, replaced by a freezing realization. I just nodded and said, "Okay." Then I added, "Neither am I." She looked like she wanted to snap back, but she just shrugged and locked herself in the bathroom. I returned to the sofa and watched the sky turn gray as the sun began to rise. The following morning, I headed to my meeting fueled by nothing but adrenaline and a lack of sleep. I performed perfectly, addressing every concern and walking out of that room certain that the deal was ours. My supervisor offered his praise and a firm handshake, but my heart wasn't in it. My mind was stuck on a loop, replaying the way Elena had looked at me with such indifference, as if I were merely an obstacle in her path. When I returned to our place around mid-afternoon, she was already out. A scrap of paper on the island mentioned she had client sessions until late. I sat down and pulled up my laptop. There it was, the invitation I had been ignoring for nearly a month. A firm in Dublin, Ireland, was looking for a lead architect. It came with a 40% salary increase, a full moving stipend, and the chance to work on next-generation tech. They had found me on LinkedIn, flown me out for a series of talks in early autumn, and extended the offer shortly after. I had intended to say no because of Elena, because I believed we were building a life together. I stared at that screen, thinking about the woman who had just told me she owed me nothing. I clicked reply and wrote that I accepted the position and asked for a start date. They wrote back within the hour. My first day would be November 1st. I had 4 weeks. I didn't say a word to Elena. I played the part of the dutiful partner, making dinner and watching shows, though she barely seemed to notice I was there. She was constantly occupied with her phone or staying out late under the guise of work or friends. Some nights, she would crawl into bed at 2 in the morning without a sound and leave before I even poured my first cup of coffee. I began the process of moving in secret. I moved my belongings into my friend Simon's garage during my lunch hours. I sold my vehicle through a private buyer, moved my funds into a personal account, and redirected my mail. I ended my memberships and canceled every service tied to the city. Simon told me over a drink that if she didn't show me respect, I didn't owe her an explanation. He told me I wasn't escaping. I was moving toward a better version of my life. On October 29th, I contacted the landlord and covered my portion of the lease through the end of the year, adding a bonus month for the trouble. On the 30th, while Elena was at a brunch that stretched into the evening, I cleared out the last of my things. I left my set of keys on the counter next to a check for 2 months of rent. No letter, no parting words. I was on a flight to Dublin by 6 the next morning. The initial phase in Dublin felt like a different world. A fresh city, a challenging role, a total reset. I poured all my energy into the firm, mastering their systems and building a rapport with my new colleagues. On my days off, I wandered along the river, visited historic libraries, and took long drives to the rugged western coast. I joined a local sports club and started a morning running routine. I felt a strange lightness, as if a heavy shroud had been lifted from my shoulders. Elena started reaching out 2 days after I landed. Her messages were frantic at first, asking where I was and accusing me of being immature for disappearing. Then came the phone calls, dozens of them over the first few weeks. I never picked up. I would just watch her name flash on the screen, accompanied by a photo of us on a beach in the sun, and let it go to voicemail. By the holidays, the attempts became rare. By the start of the new year, they ceased entirely. That spring, I met someone. Her name was Ila. She was a coordinator at a partner company, 30 years old, with a sharp mind and a laugh that made me feel truly alive for the first time in years. We hit it off at a professional mixer, joking about the lack of good tacos in Ireland, and ended up talking for hours. We started seeing each other regularly, taking trips to the northern coast and spending evenings at local pubs. It was effortless. She didn't play mind games. If she said she would call, she did. If she was running behind, she sent a text. If something was on her mind, we talked it out. The contrast to my previous life was staggering. By late summer, we were serious. My career was at an all-time high, and I finally felt like myself again. Then, my firm sent me to a conference in San Francisco. Ila flew out to join me for the final weekend. We had planned to see the sights and enjoy the world-class dining. I figured I was safe, since we were hundreds of miles from my old home. On our final night, I took Ila to a high-end Italian spot. The ambience was perfect, with soft music and warm lighting. We were laughing and waiting for our food when I spotted her. Elena was standing by the entrance with a group of friends. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, time stood still. Then she began walking toward our table. She looked different, much thinner and noticeably exhausted. Her hair was shorter and darker, and there were deep shadows under her eyes. She asked if we could speak privately, her voice trembling. Ila looked at me with concern, but I gave her hand a gentle squeeze and stepped outside with Elena. The street was bustling with tourists and traffic, and the fog was starting to roll in. Elena immediately started crying, asking how I could just walk away without a word. I told her calmly that she had checked out of our relationship long before I physically left. I reminded her of the night she stayed out until dawn and told me she didn't owe me anything. She wiped her eyes and claimed she was going through something she didn't know how to share. Then she dropped the bombshell. She told me she had been pregnant. My heart stopped. She explained that the night she came home late, she had just found out. She had panicked and spent the night at a friend's house making poor choices because she was terrified. She said that 2 weeks after I left. She went through a miscarriage alone in the hospital. She told me she needed me and I wasn't there. The guilt was heavy, but then she admitted it was her fault for pushing me away and being afraid that I would leave her just like her father had left her mother. We stood there as the world moved around us. I could see Ila through the window, waiting patiently. I asked Eleanor why she didn't just tell me the truth that night. She admitted she was irrational and handled everything wrong. I told her I was truly sorry for her pain, but that she had chosen not to trust me. She agreed, saying she lost me because of those choices. She looked at Ila and said I deserved someone better. Elena told me she had been in counseling and was moving to a different state to be near family. We said our goodbyes, and she walked away into the fog. I returned to Dublin 2 days later. Ila and I talked through everything on the flight home. She listened with an open heart and no judgment, which only confirmed that she was the one. 6 months later, I asked her to marry me on a cliffside overlooking the ocean. She said yes instantly. My life is full now. I live in a city I adore, with a woman who communicates and trusts me. I still think of Elena sometimes, usually late at night. I wonder if things could have been different if we had just talked. But I also know that some relationships are given to us so that we understand what we will never allow to happen to us again. I don't regret leaving. I only regret how it happened. But I will never regret choosing myself when it became clear that I was no longer valued. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new interesting stories.